On this episode of RCKicks, we're taking a look at this, the EXO Cinemaster 2. Now you're looking at £279 or $349. Apparently it's got a 3-axis gimbal and it's 4K, so can you really have your cake and eat it? Roll the VT, Charlie. So I'm on the hunt for the holy grail of drones. What is that? Well, it's reasonably priced, compact, easy to fly, gimbal, super smooth, great camera, high frame rate, and reliable. Now, is this that drone? Well, we're going to find out. So the first thing we're going to do is unbox it and take a look at what you get for your money. Now, on first opening the box, what you're presented with is the carry case. Now, these are pretty standard issue these days, and this one is no different. Now, it's no designer handbag, but it will get the job done. How well it will hold up over a few years, I honestly don't know, but it's good enough. Well, apart from this sort of bit of useless plasticky bit that you get, but in the box you're presented with everything is in their pouch and everything's laid out quite nicely. Now that's pretty standard again. Now you get a transmitter, which looks very familiar, and yes, if you've watched some of my videos before, you'll realize that this is basically the Holystone HS710 transmitter. And fair enough, yes, they're sharing bits and pieces, and I have no real problems with this one at all. It's good in the hands, and when you fold it all down, it's nice and compact. Also, when you fit your iPhone or whatever mobile phone you've got into it, it sits quite snugly, and I've never had a problem with it falling out. So the joystick is not unique, but it does the job. You have your power here. Then on the screen, it's pretty straightforward, very easy to see. That's the battery life of the transmitter. That's the battery life of the drone itself. Your height, your distance. This is the representation of the aerial strength to the drone. Mode 1 and 2 depends on how you like to fly your drone. Then on here, how many satellites it picks up, and the GPS being on. So all pretty straightforward. On the left here, you've got the lock button. That's what you do to launch it. Then you've got a camera button up here, and on the top you've got take off and land. On the right side, you've got your dual rates. You can have it on low stable mode, or you can have it on a high rate mode, depending on whether you want to film or whether you want to fly the drone around. You can jump back and forward between high and low rates. Then on the right here, you also have the gimbal, so you can pitch the camera down or up. Then you've got on the button on the right here is the return to home button. When you press that, up in the middle here, you get a home icon appear. So it's all pretty straightforward. Then you've got your aerials on the back here, and you can then pull out this section, which then allows you to put your phone in it. Pretty straightforward and easy to use. Oh, I almost forgot, you can turn the GPS on and off on the right hand side, and it runs on 2 AA batteries. Now, depending on the battery options you choose, this one came with 2. You can get up to 4, I think, but you can only really carry 3 in the bag. You've got a cutout here for 2, and then you can have 1 in the drone. There is this little bit of foam that you can have that puts in between the battery and the drone itself, so the battery is not actually powered into the drone. Now, the batteries themselves are 3,200 milliamps, and they're 11.4 volts, giving you 28 minutes of flight time. And that's a big tick because the flight time on this is fantastic. I really felt that I could get everything I needed out of the drone before I ran out of 1 battery. Having 2 batteries means you've got lots of options, so that you could actually take it for the whole day, and then you could probably film 3 or 4 times with 2 batteries, 3 if you want to pay the extra money. One thing that is a bit annoying is the charge times on these are epically long. Because you charge them with a USB, you're looking at like 4 to 5 hours per battery, which is a bit of a faff. I kind of would like to see that you can charge these faster than that, but that's basically what you get with most drones these days. Now, before we take a look at the drone, there is a few other bits and pieces in the box. You get a quick start guide, and you also get the full manual. Getting this up and running is pretty standard for most drones these days, but we'll cover it in a bit. You also get some extra blades, which is nice to see, and a random little screwdriver. Now, as for the drone, it sits in this section here. It is quite long. The quality of the drone is perfectly acceptable. I'm really happy with it. I don't have any issues. But to set it up, all you do is basically tilt out the arms. There we go, and that's the basic drone. Now, after you've pulled the arms out, the drone sits on its belly, so you've got to put the front legs down. That lifts the front of the drone up and supports the drone's weight on the arms, not on the belly. The battery itself is connected up with these 6 points. It just drops into place, and then you slide it until it clicks into place. The power button is on the back, like I said before, and you hold it down, and then the LEDs light up, and then it starts the drone for you. Now, underneath you have the gimbal. Now, there's this cover over the gimbal, which is pretty naff plastic, which you have to kind of pop off. And you've got to be a little bit careful because obviously the gimbal is very fragile. This, I don't think, is the best idea. It does work, but it's a bit of a faff clicking it into place. So on the updated version of this, they definitely need to replace one of these with something a little bit better. If you turn the drone over, you'll see the optical flow sensors. Basically, they work just like your optical mouse does. As it's traveling along, it's taking constant images of the ground so that it can work out its trajectory. Very flash. Also, it's got an SD card slot so that you can write directly to it, as you obviously don't want to be copying the video to your phone, as it's a much lower resolution than what it actually can put out. The camera that is packed into this drone is a 4K UHD 30 frames per second, which is a bit lower than I'd like to see. It's got a maximum bandwidth of 50 megabits per second, and it will do slow motion at HD 1080p at 60 frames. The CMOS sensor is a f2.5 and the 4K resolution is 3840 by 2160 pixels. The lens angle is 120 degrees and the focal length is 2.96 millimeters. It's a 3-axis gimbal and it's got EXO smoothing apparently. Ooh. So getting the drone in the air is pretty straightforward. Now the process to start this up and do the calibrations has become a bit of the standard. Basically you just turn on the transmitter, hold down the button once you've extended the arms and the legs. Then you get the 4 green lights and it will sit there. Take your phone and then connect it to the Wi-Fi of the drone. Once it's connected, you can drop into the software that you use for the drone. Then it will actually come up with the camera feed on the actual app and you know you're golden. Now it will want to know that it needs to be calibrated. So there's 2 calibrations you have to do. One, you have to hold the drone and you have to rotate 3 times. Then on the screen of the app, it will actually acknowledge that. Then the next thing you do is hold the drone vertical above your head and then rotate 3 times again. And then you're pretty much ready to go. Put the drone on the ground, then you just press the red lock button. The actual blades will spin up and you're pretty much ready to go. You hold down the launch button or you can press up and the drone will come up. So that's pretty standard stuff. Obviously, there's all the other health and safety aspects that you've got to do to make sure that your area is clear, all that kind of stuff, but that's your responsibility, so make sure you've read and understood all the instructions. Now I've got a top tip for you for any drone that's got high and low rates, especially this one. When you calibrate to take off the first time, make sure you're in high rate, because if something goes wrong with that calibration and you don't know about it, when you go to bring the drone up, it may start to veer off into a direction, and if you're in low rate, you'll push the joysticks to counteract that and you won't have enough. If you're in high rate, you have much more control over the drone, so you can bring the drone back in and deal with the calibration problem and then fly safely. So make sure if you're taking off, always take off in high rate first. So I've been using this drone for a few days now and I've put about 12 batteries through it. So this is just my early opinions and things will change as I put more hours under my belt. But we'll cover some of the basic things and some of my opinions, and we'll also cut to some flying footage as I go through different aspects of it. So we'll kick off with the first one, ease of use. Now this is a very standard setup and flying drone, just like a lot of the other drones in this class. So getting it up and running is super easy, especially if you've used other drones before. So no problems with that whatsoever. Maneuverability, the drone is a little bit heavy, but it's very powerful. So I found with a bit of wind, it wasn't a problem at all. Now the turning circle is not as sharp as I'd like if you want to do curved pans, but apart from that, in the high rate, you can move around quite well, especially if there's a bit of wind. So that I think is definitely a thumbs up, the flyability aspect of it. Battery life is brilliant, so I really enjoyed that you could really get a decent 28 minutes out of it, and if you've got a few batteries, you can really spend quite some time getting the shots you want. The gimbal is amazing. I have to give them full credit, whoever designed and made the gimbal and the gimbal software. It is very forgiving. So that's probably my best aspect of this drone, is just how good and smooth the gimbal is. Now I am no brilliant drone pilot, but even with my jerky movements, the gimbal smoothed out the camera shots and the camera image. As for the camera itself, when I first started doing filming, I filmed in 1080p 60, as my videos come out in 1080p, so I thought I'll have the extra frame rate because I like doing panning shots and quite fast flowing shots. Unfortunately, 1080p is rubbish. Don't even go anywhere near it. Definitely want to be flying this at 4K. The 4K image is definitely where you want to be at. It's much better and a lot crisper. But the downside is this, it's only 30 frames per second, so it's perfect for cinematic shots of countryside and slow moving things. But if you are like me and you like to have drone shots where you're moving and you're panning, yep, 30 frames per second is just not going to cut it. And that is my biggest bugbear for this drone. I wish we had higher frame rates. That is probably the biggest thing that would put me off purchasing this drone, is just that the camera frame rate is just that little bit too low for me personally. But if you like doing beautiful cinematic shots, then you're going to get on with this drone perfectly well for the budget. As for the app, easy to download and pretty standard, so very easy to use. If you've used other apps before, it pretty much follows along the same sort of lines. So as for the app experience itself, it's good enough and I'll give that a thumbs up. The features of follow. Now, when I did the follow aspect, it worked and I had no problem with it. The other one is that it pans around me. I could not get it to do that at all. Every time I did that, it just flew off in some strange direction. Not sure if I was doing something wrong. I need to double check that I haven't set the circumference too wide or something, but it didn't even start to rotate. It just shot off in a strange direction and I had to cancel it and take over. So I'm not sure what I'm doing wrong on that aspect. So I will play around with that again to see if I can actually get that working. So we'll take that with a pinch of salt at the moment, as that could be something that I'm doing, not necessarily the drone. So to wrap up my review, I think it's a brilliant drone with just one Achilles heel. For the money, I think it's definitely worth it from a quality point of view, ease of use, flying characteristics. It's just the camera frame rate. really gutted about that. So hopefully there will be an updated version of this that's just got a little bit better camera in it. But we're getting very close to finding the holy grail of a good budget drone. Thanks so much. Please like and subscribe. Lots more drones RC goodness coming your way soon.